Welcome back. This is part two of the War of 1812 lecture, the Battle of Washington, D.C. We just talked about that. President Madison's wife, Dolly, saved one of Washington's paintings and ran out in Virginia. And she left a dinner set for 40 people. And so the British came in and they had a nice meal, and then they burnt the White House down. Okay, so the British want to take Baltimore. Baltimore's got some commercial value. A lot of trade comes through there. So they sailed up the Chesapeake Bay and got to Baltimore. Um, the Americans were prepared, and the only way the British could get through is to get past Fort McHenry. So what the British did was they bombed Fort McHenry all night and put a bunch of shot and rockets in on it, and it was still standing at the end. The American commanders, they had a huge flag commissioned from one of the people in Baltimore, and it's giant. If you ever go to the Museum of American History, it's hanging on a wall, and it's like 4 stories tall. They had this huge flag, and they decided to put it up once the British had stopped shelling. So Francis Scott Key was there, and he was on a ship in the harbor and couldn't get out because of the fighting. So he was listening to and watching the battle all night, and then in the morning he saw the giant flag, be raised. So he wrote a poem. It was called "The Star Spangled Banner." Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming? So what he's saying is he's happy to see the flag. So it's like a love letter to the flag. Later, they end up pairing it with an English drinking song, and voila, we have our national anthem. All right, I'm going to see who's listening. Put your right hand in the air and point to the ceiling with one finger. Thank you. Okay, put your hand down. All right, let's talk about the Battle of New Orleans. So, in late 1814, Andrew Jackson battles and defeats the Native Americans aiding the British, and he goes to New Orleans to protect it. Now, New Orleans is crucial because if the British hold New Orleans, basically the Americans can't use the Mississippi River, and the British can start to they've got a big water highway back and forth between them and Canada. So this would really stop any further expansion of the Americans. The British attacked New Orleans. The American soldiers had dug trenches, and Jackson did a very good job in defending. And the British soldiers did not penetrate. They did not get into New Orleans. 2,000 British soldiers died and only 70 Americans. The funny thing is the battle was fought 2 weeks after the war ended, but the treaty was signed in Belgium, and it didn't reach the United States for like 4 or 5 weeks. So really, this was technically, we're fighting during peacetime. Andrew Jackson becomes a great war hero, and that's going to propel him to fame and stardom in the presidency later, and we will get to that. Okay, the end of the war. So the people in New England, they met in Hartford, Connecticut, this thing called the Hartford Convention, and they were pretty much Federalists. And the people in New England were really favorable towards Britain. And the reason they are favorable towards Britain is because they did a lot of trade with Britain. So they had a lot of affinity for them. They were getting tired of being having their trade choked off by the United States government. They wanted to trade with Britain, and they wanted to be free and do what they wanted. So they threatened to secede if the war continued. What happened was most of them were Federalists, and what happened was right after they had this convention, the United States wins the war. This great wave of patriotism comes along, and people start to look at the Federalists like they're traitors. So this is pretty much the end of the Federalist Party as being a national party. Yeah, they did not look good after this. Okay, so we got the Treaty of Ghent, signed in Belgium. It's not the Treaty of Paris, like every other treaty we have. So neither side gained anything. Pretty much the United States and Britain said, let's go back to what it was like before the war. We'll give up our gains, you give up your gains, and we'll just call it a draw. And so we did. So we went through all that trouble and nothing changed. But the British had stopped impressing people, sailors, because they were no longer fighting against France. So really, the French war ended and our problem went away. It's nothing we did. Okay, so the effects of the War of 1812. This bought the U.S. some respect from Europe. This is one of the first times America had something to be proud of as a country, as everybody did it. So since the national pride comes out, and of course, the running theme of this of our studies this year, Native Americans lose a lot of land. So this did hammer out the boundaries of the U.S., and they promised to stay out of the Northwest Territory. The border with Canada is recognized, and the U.S. economy gets a lot better because it gets to trade with Britain. So having peace with Britain really does a lot of good for us, for the United States. All right, and that is the War of 1812. I have some videos and some questions in the next assignment, so check it out.